People who legally died for a few minutes and came back, what was it like? There is a show on Netflix that just came out called Surviving Death, and the first episode is all about this and what people experienced while they were dead. It was really neat. My mother was legally dead for a half an hour due to a cardiac arrest. As a side note, recovery from cardiac arrest after 10 minutes is a 1% chance and decreases exponentially every second after that, so it's really a miracle she survived, and with very little brain damage to boot. She remembers a dream in that time where she was headed towards a bridge. On the other side she saw her deceased parents smiling and waving. As she approached the bridge, their expressions changed. They didn't want her. My mom explains feeling rejected by her own parents and crestfallen because of it, but she didn't get on the bridge and turned around. After she came back, she recognizes the change in their demeanors to be that they didn't want her yet because it wasn't her time to cross over yet. My dad ended up in the ICU with internal bleeding. All initial attempts to stop the bleeding failed. Apparently died for a couple of minutes, but they were able to bring him back. He said he remembers walking through an all-grey neighborhood. Grey houses, grey grass, grey streets, everything a different shade of grey. No people or animals around. Empty but not run down or anything like that. He assumed this was the afterlife, so he proceeded to walk around and search for my cousin who recently passed away. He made his way into a house and walked up the stairs. At the top of the stairs a door opened and a bright light shined through. He couldn't see anything because of the light but decided not to walk into it. He passed there on the stairs and asked for more time. The door closed. Doctor was able to stop the bleeding. That was 12 years ago. My dad still has health issues but he got more time like asked for. I had a heart attack while on a run. Dropped dead and bounced off the ground. Cardiologists are sure my heart stopped for about 30 seconds. I snapped back to when the guys started calling my name. It wasn't a Fred Sanford, it's the big one Elizabeth event. Didn't see any light or myself, it was like a surreal dream without anything remarkable. Got up and walked the last 50 feet, 15 meters, to cross the finish line. Did damage to the heart, received multiple stents, in the hospital for 4 days and was 50 years old. Moral of the story, listen to your body. You bigot, why are you discriminating against us who have illegally died? Itchy, very itchy. /it's quote by Superman BTW. I've been pronounced dead twice in my life. The first time, I drowned as a child, about 7 years old. I wanted to see the pool from the high dive. I went up, looked, and slipped when I went to go back down. I remember falling. And then I was surrounded by paramedics and spewing pool water from my lungs while some lady was crossing herself. According to what I've been able to piece together, I was knocked out when I hit the water, and the lifeguard thought I was playing. I drowned while everyone was waiting for me to surface. 911 was called and I was dragged from the water. CPR, before, and from the paramedics didn't work. They were about to cover me up when I started spewing water like a fountain. The second time was at work in my early 20s. I'm an industrial electrician, still to this day. I was working on the controls for a 3-phase /600V air handler's motor. I had turned the circuit off, locked it, and tagged it. Someone cut my lock off and turned it back on without telling anyone. 1 second I'm working on the controls, next second my entire body lights up with pure pain and agony, and then I wake up in the hospital. My boss heard my teeth clack shut when I got hit, and he hit me in the chest with a 2x4 to get me off of it. I didn't have a pulse when EMTs got there, and they got my body rebooted. I woke up in the hospital about 4 hours later. I never saw a light at the end of a tunnel, no lake of fire. Literally nothing. I'll post an update if it happens again. I died illegally and was sent to prison for 3 months. My grandfather did. He got T-boned by someone running a red light, not sure how long he was technically dead, but I do know that his heart stopped for a while, and the doctors didn't actually expect to get him back. He told me later that he'd had the full out-of-body experience, seeing his body on the operating table, getting pulled into a black tunnel with bright warm light at the end, seeing lost loved ones waiting, etc. Apparently, when he got to the end of the tunnel, he heard a voice say not yet. Next thing he knew, he was recovering in a hospital bed with a largely metal leg. Other than the permanent limp, he made a full recovery. Clinically dead, nobody that is legally dead could be resurrected. It is impossible with all the bureaucracy involved. The amount of people describing being under/in ice cold water is interesting. I wonder what the correlation is to that vision, maybe the loss of pumping warm blood? I got injected with some medicine on an adult dose when I was just 10 years old. I started feeling funny and went to my father to tell him about it, just to collapse right beside him and hitting my back head so hard I had a stroke and my arms recoiled. According to everyone, at least, I don't remember that. What I do remember is suddenly being on my house, but somehow it appeared that my house was floating on a blue vacuum, and, for some reason, I had the urge to go upstairs. I walked slowly up to where my room was. My room's door was closed but my parents' wasn't, and inside my parents' room there was what I could only describe as the brightest light I've ever seen. It didn't shine me though, it was a very penetrating blue light, the ones that get ingrained in your eyes. I started walking towards it, but suddenly I felt like something grabbed me by the foot and pulled me downstairs all the way back to the main door, and suddenly, all turned to black. From there I regained consciousness slowly, and I was again at the hospital, with ice on my head and N4 on my arm. I then proceeded to puke, and that was the end of it. I actually didn't really process what I saw until some days after. I realized I might have just fucking died, lol. Might not count, but family story, takes place in Sicily in the early 1900s. Had a great uncle that the doctors had written off for dead. Uncle remembers a person/angel walking up to him, slapping him on the cheek, and saying, "Hey, get up. It's not your time yet." Doctor was apparently stunned to see him all dressed and good to go when he came back. Edit, angle, greater than angel. Doe. I watched my mom die from acute pulmonary edema. She looked me straight in the eye seconds before and said, "I'm not afraid." She says she's glad to see me. She was revived and had no memory of what she saw, unfortunately. She passed away a year later. I was gone once because of a cerebral hemorrhage after a random kick to the head by a drunk guy. I felt a bit high, because of heavy blood loss before the lights went out. When I woke up I was emotionally numb for the first day. Some of my friends visited me, and when I woke up all my day ones were crying on the bedside and stuff. But I couldn't realize why they were so concerned about me, and I tried to be funny the whole time, while I was still in a life-threatening condition. Between falling into coma and waking up I can't remember well, but I know that I dreamt a bit like normal sleeping. Can't remember my dream though. I think the most intense thing, for me it was, and it still is, about such an experience is not the moment it's happening, but rather the late realization that it in fact happened, and how somebody will cope with the thoughts about the fact that life could have been ended at some point and all the questions that come along with it. Had a guy code on us on the way to the hospital, one shock and like 30 seconds of CPR and he's back. Pretty out of it as to be expected after death. I'm driving us in and I hear from the back, "Guy, what happened? I feel weird." Medic, "Does your chest hurt?" Guy, "No, why?" Medic, "Well, you fucking died on us, we shocked you and did CPR. Not cool." Guy, "Oh, I'm sorry." So apparently it's pretty disorienting. Dream-like and scary until I died, and then it was absolute bliss. I didn't want to come back at first. I'm now glad the hospital brought me back, but that feeling of bliss is something I will never forget. I have a co-worker who this happened to, and when he actually died he collapsed out of the chair he was sitting in, and he described it as someone sucker punching him in the back of the head, and then black, no dreams, no lights, no flashbacks, nothing. When he came back he was told the sucker punch that he remembers was his head hitting the ground. My mother was dead for over 20 minutes. She said she saw nothing, felt nothing. She only knew she'd been dead when she was brought round by the medics in the hospital. As she is a very religious lady, it knocked her religious belief for many years. She now thinks she wasn't supposed to see anything, as she feels she would have wanted to stay with those she would have seen, like her mother, etc.